Hello, hello, peace and blessings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another lunar cycle overview. I'm Michael. This is One Sky Astrology. This month's lunar cycle is amazing. I'm going to try to focus and get through it without, just going like full bore caffeinated on everybody. But I really want to keep a good pace because there's just so much to get through this month. It's eclipse season, and eclipse season started with last month's lunar eclipse, the full moon, and it continues with this month's new moon on October 2nd. It's a solar eclipse in constellation Virgo on the star Vindamayatrix, the goddess's gathering hand. The full moon on October 17th is taking place in Pisces, opposite of Virgo's sun. And the moon in Pisces will be conjoined to Eris, 17 arc minutes, very close. So that will form a Mars, Pluto, Sun, Moon, Eris grand cross. Very, very dynamic. This video is going to examine the new moon, the transits leading to the full moon, the transits leading to the next new moon, and we'll take a quick look at the next new moon. So we have 5 sections in this video. Check the timestamps for details. Without any delay, let's orient ourselves to the sky for October 2nd's new moon, which starts this cycle. In Virgo, we see the sun and moon, and they're close to the south node. That's one of the defining features of this eclipse, or this lunar cycle, is that it is an eclipse. Whenever sun and moon are close to nodes, you have the conditions for an eclipse. That's what a node is. The sun and moon are also with Mercury, the asteroid Astrea, which we'll take a little closer look at, and in the very degree of dwarf planet Makemake. Makemake is a higher octave of Uranus in the Mercury, Uranus, Makemake octaves. I will say more about Makemake later. Astrea too. We'll take a fair look at all this. For now, I just want to note that Venus is in late Virgo. Pluto is in a cuspy area between Sagittarius and Capricorn. Ceres is here in Capricorn proper. I'm always forgetting about Ceres because we're building her, and she's on fixed star Nunki. Saturn is retrograde in Aquarius. Neptune for this new moon is in Pisces with the north node, so Neptune will be part of this eclipse. It'll be a Neptune-Pisces eclipse. Eris and Chiron are taking up their position in later Pisces. Uranus and Jupiter occupy the constellation of Taurus. Mars is situated in Gemini on a very important degree of the sky. The degree of fixed star Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, the scorcher, that makes Mars very important this month. And that is how things shake out. We'll look a lot more closely at Astrea and Makemake in this section on the new moon. And the intention of a new moon is understood as this time of seed planting or stillness. It's a low energy time as opposed to the full moon, which is a high energy time of harvest. So let's break this down. Let's just take an overview. We have a south node eclipse in Virgo involving Neptune with the north node. Now the south node is conjunct Sun, Moon, Makemake, asteroid Astrea, and Mercury. Makemake is a dwarf planet. So that's a lot to unpack. That's a ton to unpack. And we have a square here. We have a T-square to Mars on fixed star Sirius opposed to Ceres on Nunki in Sag. All right, so like I said, this one's going to be a lot. I just want to dive in and do as much justice to this month as I can. We have a Virgo new moon and a Virgo eclipse. This is Virgo season, and the sun will be in Virgo for the entirety of this lunation. So we must endeavor to understand Virgo. Virgo comes from the Latin virgin. It's the nominative of virginum, which was an adjective meaning fresh or young. And in its nominative form, Virgo, it meant in Latin a maiden or an unwedded girl or woman. You'll notice that is, Latin's like 2,700 years old as a language, and we only get this idea of religious piety and sexual chastity circa 1200, circa the 13th century. Thank you to the church for that. And this goes back, this idea, way further, older than the church, this one. So we have to understand that the Virgo archetype, we always talk about a Virgo archetype here, and they're like, yeah, Virgo likes spreadsheets, Virgo likes to improve things. But if you want the cookbook on Virgo this month, go look it up. It's out there. You'll find it. I want to talk about a little bit of a different take on Virgo. Just want to make sure I've got everything here. Yeah, that's that. I think it's interesting that it was a woman who was unbeholden to anyone. She was her own property. She was not a man's. A Virgo was a woman who didn't belong to anyone but herself legally. I find that noteworthy. I definitely find that noteworthy. Virgo is one of the remaining mysteries of the sky to me. There's been a lot of good discussion lately in our community about the rulership of Virgo, which I fully support. There's been talk about, does Venus have an association with Virgo? Does Mercury have an association with Libra? Did they switch things? Some people say, oh yeah, they definitely switch things. Some people say they have record of them switching them. And I think it's important to think differently about things. Right. So Virgo's always been in question for me because I've never subscribed to the sort of Renaissance model of like sun and moon are here, which means that the visible sky is represented around the zodiac with Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn. I think it's interesting that even maps or tracks. But when you go back to Sumer, Venus was called the Lion of Heaven and was associated with Leo, like unequivocally. I learned this very recently, so I hope like everyone, that I can evolve and change when I'm exposed to new information. And then so you might say, well, what of Libra? Well, the very stars, Zeben Eshmali and Zeben El Janubi that we use to define the scales, that translates as the northern and southern claw. So they even as the Roman emperors separated from Scorpio and made it the scales, the Greeks still referred to it as chele. The claws. So Libra, maybe, Scorpios, maybe Mars. We can call into question a lot of the relationships and correlations that are just taken for granted today. And this is an area of the sky that I've always called into question. I can correlate a lot of Virgo to the asteroid belt, which was at its wildest and most theoretical, it was a very tiny planet. I get that. In fact, if we took all the millions of asteroids in the main belt, plus dwarf planet Ceres, that's all of it, we would have a mass that is 3% the mass of the moon. it's not convincing. And so there's pretty huge questions when we get into like phaeton theory or talk about Tiamat, which the Sumerians supposedly named the planet that existed at that point in the planetary belt. There's a lot of hypothetical models to explain the asteroid belt, but whatever it is, I don't care how it happened. I really don't. Whatever it is, it correlates to Virgo perfectly. In as much as we have archetypes of the divine feminine, Virgo is the goddess, and all these asteroids, had you not noticed, they're feminine in nature. They're symbols of the divine uplifted feminine. The Virgo in the star, the asterism of Virgo, classically holds a wheat in her hand, in the hand signified by fixed star Alpha Virgo, Spica. Ceres, the dwarf planet, the main body in the asteroid belt from which we get cereal, has a correlation with grains and wheat. I can go on. There's an association with crisis, with trauma, with sacrifice. These are time-tested Virgo themes, and they're not only reflected in the mythologies of the asteroid goddesses, but they could likely reflect a cosmic trauma, right? A crisis of significant proportion. Even if hypothetical Tiamat was a tiny, tiny planet, right? So I stay open. And then you fast forward to 1801, when the Titius Bode law led astronomers in Italy to look for where a planet should be. Formulaically, we look at the solar system, we say, oh, there's clearly, there should be a planet right here. And they look and they find Ceres. When they found Ceres, there was like a half century of conversation about, well, this obviously rules Virgo. Look at these correlations. Now, at the time, they didn't realize that Ceres was a dwarf planet within an asteroid belt of millions of asteroids. But they thought they had discovered, right, a very small planet. And they had. So there's so much here to unpack. There's too much here to unpack for this video. Let's just say the relationship between Virgo and the asteroid belt as a whole remains compelling. That Mercury and Venus both have some obvious associations, but rulership, like main correlation, it's a very open question to me. I don't know if we can isolate Ceres from the rest of the asteroid belt and say, like the astrologers of the early 19th century. I don't think we can say there's a rulership correlation. I don't know if we can say that if we took the asteroid belt, or at least the main belt, and Ceres, the dwarf planet, as a whole, which, first of all, we can't do that. It's spread all around the sky. It makes no sense to try to localize it. I mean, we can localize Ceres, but like I said, there's too much. There's way too much here to unpack. There's themes of the divine feminine across the spectrum, right? From the dignified and uplifted to the traumatized. And one thing that I've always seen Virgo do well is analyze, right? Probably where the Mercury connection comes in. Virgo learns through service, and the crisis comes when that service is resisted. So Virgo is famous for learning through crisis, but Virgo wants to be of service. Virgo wants to be of service to improve things. Because early Virgo follows Leo naturally, it's a really hard part of the sky where we run into a sort of like trajectory in Leo where we have a lot of self-oriented energy. And then here, we have other-oriented energy where we're humbling ourselves for the benefit of the group or for others. That is one of the reasons Virgo gets associated with crisis. There's often a resistance to that Virgo imperative. So I want to highlight that Virgo imperative. This is a Virgo moon, and that is a Virgo imperative. Lowering yourself, not resisting the urge to humility, like not resisting the urge to service. It could be the nature of this. Some of us will be called in that direction and have to extend ourselves. All right, just to focus on the nature of the South Node in all this, like as an eclipse. The South Node is a mysterious point. It's connected to the past. It's connected to karma in like a karma dharma dichotomy, where the south node is connected to patterns that are already set in stone and already exist. And the north node is connected to the path or the way forward. Dharma is a word that has nothing in particular to do with Buddhism, or like they talk about Shiva Dharma, they talk about liberation Dharma, they talk about Dharma very broadly. Dharma is a word that, like Tao, means way or path. It's just, we all have a Dharma. The south node tends to take from us. It's digesting the past, and it takes from us to orient us to our Dharma, to our path, to our spiritual or karmic work here on Earth. When we look at eclipses, we have families of them, and I want to take a journey here into Bernadette Brady's assessment of this eclipse cycle. She notes correctly that this eclipse starts on April 1st, 1718. Now, without getting into what a Saros series is or how eclipse cycles work, I will say that she is working from a somewhat incorrect basis from the beginning, noting that this was originally an Eris eclipse. We know that means it's a Pisces eclipse, and there's a huge difference there. So right there, that's kind of where I pull the plug. I will say she sees in this separation and loss to be parted, and I say, okay, Bernadette Brady, because she is excellent, but I'm not going to stop there. I want to open this up. I want to open up the 1718 chart and take a look at this. We see the sun and moon in Pisces. I am not going to belabor this. Stay with me. The only major relationship to an important major planet, keep in mind, all of these are dwarf planets and minor bodies. The only major relationship is an opposition to Uranus. So we have a sun and moon defined chiefly by an opposition to Uranus. Uranus is 3 degrees away from Makemake and is exactly, precisely, totally exact. Uranus is conjoined to dwarf planet Haumea, a higher octave of Neptune. So Makemake is a higher octave of Uranus, as we noted earlier, Haumea a higher octave of Neptune, and Uranus here in opposition to the new moon brings all of this directly into focus. So on top of Brady's noting loss, I'm going to note insight. I'm going to note flashes of insight, dreams. I'm going to note that any ideas that we have at this point, because this is a new moon feature, and because it goes directly to the nature of this eclipse and to insight, I'm going to say that throughout this month, any new ideas or flashes or downloads or just hunches or anything are going to be way more actionable than usual. This is actually information coming from, like an actionable place in the noosphere, if I may use the term, without explaining it. And it's just the field of information. We'll be very tapped in under this influence. Here is in the inner wheel, we have this origin chart, which functions as a natal chart for this eclipse series. And here we have the eclipse, October 2nd, 2024. I want to call your attention to 2 things. One, here's the original. Here is this October 2nd new moon taking place in the degree that Uranus, Haumea, Makemake occupied in that 1718 chart 306 years ago. Now, furthermore, and I looked this up, there's no error. This is amazing. Makemake, dwarf planet Makemake, a higher octave of Uranus, is itself having a 306-year orbit. 306 from 2024 is 1718, and Makemake is literally in the same place in the sky. by longitudinal and latitudinal calculations. Celestial calculations aren't made by longitude and latitude, but this is to say, by right ascension and declination, that Makemake is in the precise location in the sky to its position. Makemake is in the very same location in the sky, just back again. It's a cycle. It's a Makemake return for this eclipse. All right, so that's crazy. What does that mean? It means it is a Makemake eclipse. It's a Makemake eclipse. So let's look at Makemake. Here is Alan Clay, and he is writing in his book, The Astrology of Makemake, Uranus's Higher Octave. I will just read for the benefit of the video for those who are listening. We can look at Makemake as the higher octave of Uranus, which is traditionally the higher octave of Mercury. Makemake gives Uranus's intuitive impulses meaning and context, which transforms our understanding of his unexpected ways. And Uranus's lateral web gives Mercury's detail and energetic network to organize and connect his information. Context, in other words. Makemake is keen to learn. He shares Mercury's curiosity, but he is looking at the bigger picture as well as the detail. He talks about freedom, expansiveness, and keen vision. He encourages us to develop a richer awareness by taking old ideas and playing with them experimentally to liberate the active components. Right? Find the kernels, find the juice in old ideas, bring them up to date, liberate the active components. We know that Uranus brings us intuitive insights, and we have to honor them for the valuable insights that they are and act on them, or we risk whatever it is manifesting in our lives in a more Saturnian way so that we eventually get the lesson. With Makemake, we need to embrace the rich culture that is created through all these insights. There is an inherent fractal structure in the rich detail of our lives, so that any part of the structure references all the other parts. Makemake reveals this structure, which is the model that we build of our world from Uranus's intuitive flashes. There is no real world. There are just phenomena which we interpret based on our experience. We then react based on that interpretation, and so shape our reality through those responses. This is how this is the Makemake level of insight and wisdom. So we create our world by how we perceive it and interact with it. Until now, this has largely been an unconscious process, but as we embrace this new energy, we begin to understand the creative power of the personal view of reality. This is the power that great minds have to shape the consensus view. All right, friends, you can take that or leave that, but that's Alan Clay's breakdown. And I think there's a lot of important information there, a lot of richness. I would also, just kind of while we're on the subject, like to turn to Astraea. So I sort of, I don't know a lot about Astraea. I don't know a lot. I don't focus on asteroids. I leave that to others who focus on asteroids. We all have our focus within this whole thing, our focus and foci. And asteroids aren't one of mine. That's okay. That's okay. When I look up Astraea, I don't find any consensus information on what the asteroid is. So I just go right to mythology. And we have the name Astrea, meaning star maiden, reflects her celestial nature and connection to the heavens. In the lore of Greek mythology, she lived on Earth during the Golden Age, a time when humans lived in peace and harmony. However, as the Iron Age dawned, and these are correlate to Platonic periods throughout the Great Year, and that's a Great Year is a full cycle of celestial procession of the stars back to their point of origin from any given point. That's a Great Year. The great years divided into ages, and she lived on Earth during the Golden Age, the most uplifted and divine time. However, as the Iron Age, and this is correlate to the Vedic understanding of the Kali Yuga, as the Iron Age dawned, she left Earth. She was the last of the divine figures, the deities, to leave Earth, dismayed by the growing injustice and corruption among humans. There's some connection between her and Virgo, but I take that as very metaphorical. Interestingly, when they discovered Uranus, they were going to name it Astrea. I think I'll leave that here. That's all I want to introduce when it comes to the nature of Astrea. We have hope, uplift, dignity, and a connection to divine realms. I don't want to over-define because we're really not sure. It's kind of confusing. So with Makemake, we have information flashes, downloads, knowings, insights, next level context and ability to organize information and find patterns, meaningful patterns within information that propel us forward and take things to the next level. With Astrea, we see a focus on inner dignity, human sovereignty, connection to divinity. And I want to just remind everybody that just like the sun and moon and Mercury, these are eclipsed. These are under the influence of South Node. We will be focusing on them intensely, maybe even very intensely, but through a lens darkly. So we may not get the clearest expression of these energies. When I detail these energies, I detail the higher aspects so that we can focus on them this month. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this distorted or somehow warped or discolored. All right, so here's Makemake, and this Makemake return happens precisely 0 degrees 0 minutes on fixed star Vindamatrix. So we can say also that the sun and moon are 13 arc minutes approaching Vindamatrix, and this is a Vindamatrix eclipse. So that's confusing, and I'll tell you why. Brady, whom I love, associates with gathering or collecting or like harvest. She associates Vindamatrix with these things. She refutes Robson's and Rigger's claim that it's an evil star. They are catastrophists, and if you look this star up, you'll find it's the Widowmaker. Your man is going to die young, or your woman will also die, probably young. Everyone dies. It's terrible. It's all Vindamatrix's fault. That is nonsense. Don't go for that. Vindamatrix is a sister star to mighty Spica, a blessing star. Spica is the hand holding the blessing. Vindamatrix is the gathering. Now, Spica being a goddess and or being of the nature of Virgo and representing the goddess and the divine feminine, there's a connection to sort of overarching principles in Virgo, and I want to say that if Spica is to receive the blessing or be blessed, that Vindamatrix is probably having to do with working for, generating and karmically earning the blessing. So again, I want to emphasize Virgo's theme of service here. If you have an opportunity, or if messed up eclipse circumstances lead you to an opportunity where you have to be of service or you need to help somebody, and it's not even cool, it's not your thing, or maybe not in that instance, then lean in. This could be a month where that really holds the key to unlocking the gift in this cycle. But I'm going to say it's a confusing star with numerous names and histories. The Arabic astronomers have historically associated it with good fortune and mischief making. But there's no consensus on its effect. If I'm honest, there's no consensus. I personally have seen Vindematrix do different things, and just been wildly confused, even in talking to people who had good grasp of astrology, talking to them about Vindematrix in their lives and charts it was activated in. Totally confusing. So I don't have all the answers. If you want that, you'll have to check out someone else's astrology channel. I have the questions, though. I have the questions, and that's one of them. How will Vindematrix affect this month's eclipse series? Time will tell. So to move on, we have a T-square to Mars on fixed star Sirius, opposite dwarf planet Ceres on fixed star Nunki. Nunki is an interesting star in the shoulder of the archer, where he holds the drawn bow, tense, ready to release. That's the energy of Nunki. It's very dynamic, very anxious, very tense energy. It's primed to strike, primed to release. I see in this conflict, I see Mars in the degree of Astrea's position at the original eclipse, the Pisces eclipse in 1718. If you look at those charts, I'm not gonna refresh that just in order to move through this in a timely way. But Astrea was here, and so we have Sirius, the star Sirius, which indicates great intensity. Great intensity. Mars is aggressive, adventurous, brusque, blunt, forceful. Ceres is sensitive and indicates humanity. In Sag, broadly, very much the collective, the zeitgeist, the collective consciousness, here represented by Ceres. The Gemini-Sag axis in which this opposition takes place tends to be about truth. That's a Sagittarius function. Vis-a-vis facts, just information, Gemini. And this could be very divisive around issues of truth and information, and how the information that we're receiving reflects natural law and the way reality really is, or the way it appears to us collectively. There's some consensus on certain things. How it's being described to us versus how it really is. This could come into front and center into issues that muddy our relationship with truth, that muddy our relationship with our fellow humans because of the path they've chosen to take. This could be very divisive. And this does correlate with election season in the U.S., and I see that specifically because the U.S. sun is right here on this Mars. So when we see Mars in grand trine to Saturn and Venus, we see Mars Sirius in Gemini, we see Venus in critical late Virgo, and Saturn here in Aquarius on Alpha Phoenix, fixed star Anka. This could lend charisma, that's a Mars-Venus function, to authorities, could be political authorities. Mars Sirius is extreme, it takes things too far, but Venus Virgo is very much of service. And this may correlate to messages from political leaders. We may hear a lot of talk about how, our charismatic talk about how they'll go to extremes for you. But it's probably authoritarianism making false promises. Big surprise. Big surprise, everybody. Especially with Mercury eclipse, right, by the South Node. Like, keep in mind, this is all of the nature of confusion and delusion to some extent. And that brings Neptune and the North Node right into the frame. So in order to counterbalance an eclipse Neptune, we always need to apply Virgo's critical thinking. We need to, and South Node will take critical thinking from us. So this is going to be a difficult eclipse. Any impulses we receive, impulses, right? Too much, serious impulses, Mars, any impulses that we receive, we are going to have to run them through the filters. Please run them through the filters this month. This could be hampered, like I said, by an eclipse that impedes critical analysis. So we may have to like remember and lean in this month to being sure that the models that we have of the world are, if we're going to act on them, let's make sure they're as accurate as we need them to be predicating actions. That's the danger here, that we act on confused information. So this is a really powerful and a somewhat confusing new moon, my friends, not just because of a Neptune eclipse, but it's confusing in, let's see, how many ways? Well, let's see. One way, there's just a lot of complex dynamics. We haven't gotten into the stars, but it's an A-list. It's an A-list, like none of the royal stars. And Spica isn't here, but there's so many stars. I'm not even going over it because it's just too complex to try to make point by point sense of. This is going to be powerful. It'll be dynamic. There are grand trines. That's another confusing thing. There are T-squares. It's confusing. There's an abundance of impactful stars. And there's a confusing focus on Makemake, Uranus, and Haumea, who's not in this. Haumea's not in this chart. I actually don't know where Haumea is at this time. But the emphasis on Haumea as precisely conjoined to Uranus in the origin chart of this eclipse series brings her into the focus of this eclipse because it defines the energy of the series. This energy is unusual and unexpected and to some extent confusing. So that's the second thing. It's just the natural energy of it is on two angles confusing. And then on a third level of confusion, we have Vindematrix, very, very closely involved with this eclipse. And Vindematrix is a confusing star. We don't have a clear picture of what Vindematrix does. I've seen ranges of effects, and the source literature can reflect that. So even in the confusion that will inevitably attend any eclipse, right, especially one involving Neptune and Pisces, we can expect boundaries to blur and lines to soften. But here with Makemake, emphasized very powerfully, we can also expect insights and flashes, right? Possibly through dreams. For some, it'll be clairaudient, clairvoyant, all the clairs. Makemake just comes through. Makemake comes through. Could be a big month, could be a dynamic month in world news. This could really stoke worldwide conflict and division. It could empower the war machine. That's a Mars on Sirius feature. It could lend charisma to authoritarian rhetoric. It's a feature of the Grand Trine. It could leave our awareness and thinking darkened and distorted for a time. It could leave us confused. But on a personal level, this month is important to understand because there is the formula here for major breakthrough in the form of thinking about things in new, different ways, uplifted ways, insightful ways. Having flashes of insight out of nowhere, like eureka moments, or understanding things that we've been unable to understand. If anyone's rolling around something they've just like philosophically really been trying to crack, I know I have. This could be a month of flash, like insight, eureka, breakthrough, understanding. For some of us, Mars on Sirius will empower us to take big new steps, brave new steps. And if you're a Venus person, or if Venus rules your chart, you should have an easier time this month, especially if you can orient to late Virgo's orientation to service. If you can align with service and improvement, this Venus is actually pretty harmonious with everything except Neptune. So watch out for confusion around romance. Watch out for delusion around issues like that. But Venus people are going to have the best of it this month. All right, that's it for the new moon. I want to jump into the waxing transits next. Here we have a transits graph from October 2nd's new moon through to the waxing quarter moon on the 10th and the full moon on the 17th. So I want to go through this a little more quickly than I've been doing it. I'm sure that will delight many of you. It delights me. I'm just going to kind of like ballpark this. I'm going to put it in groups. We have Venus trine Saturn here on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Mercury square Mars on the 5th and 6th. And Venus trine Mars from the 6th through the 9th. Mercury trine Jupiter on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And that sort of family of transits is really going to color the whole first week. We have Venus trines, which are great. On the 5th and 6th, I think Mercury square to Mars is worth understanding. This can make things really tense. It's great for problem solving, but it's going to be problems to solve. So it sort of attracts like major problems while it makes you really good at solving them. And again, this isn't a natal chart. We're doing mundane astrology. So what this looks like is general tension and a sort of like high firing mentality in everyone. So we could be really subject at these times, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, especially on the 5th and 6th, to argument. Mercury square to Mars is an argument signature. So we want to be careful that we're working together and not against the people who we're talking to. But otherwise, I think this could be a pretty smooth week of problem solving, optimism, and pretty well figuring things out. Then on the 8th and going exact on the 9th into the 10th of October, Jupiter stations retrograde. And that's going to trine Mercury when he's doing that. So we see here, Jupiter's trine Mercury. Jupiter's station retrograde will increase the effect of the Mercury trine. So our thinking here could be like really lit up on the 8th and 9th. It's not just a Jupiter retrograde, it's a Jupiter retrograde in contact with Mercury. So it could be a very hopeful time, could be a very uplifted time, joyful time, optimistic, but this should make for a pretty even and smooth week for many of us, October 3rd through the 10th. And then on the 10th, we see Mercury oppose Eris. Now, what I want to focus on is that this Mercury-Eris opposition is happening just at the time of the waxing quarter moon, which I'm going to put up on the screen for those of us who want to chart the cycle and pay close attention. We see a moon approaching Pluto conjoined Ceres in Sag for this waxing quarter, and we start to see the formation of this grand cross diabolical. So I'm going to guess that even as this moon is starting to emerge in its manifestation, that it's going to be challenging month here on paper. And this is actually Mercury opposite Eris is at like 1 degree of exact for the waxing quarter moon, which tends to have to do with expression. Gives us an early sign of how the cycle will express itself. But moving on, we have Pluto stationed direct on the 11th and 12th, and that's going to be very different for everyone depending on how Pluto is in their chart. Pluto runs a wild range, a total gamut from one extreme to the other. So we can say Pluto being stationed direct will emphasize extremes, will emphasize dichotomy, duality, and paradox, the paradox of two truths about things that Pluto represents. And as the full moon approaches, we have this really interesting family of transits here in the second week of October. From the 12th through the 16th of October, we have Sun square Mars, Mercury square Pluto. So again, Pluto will be stationed and Mercury were making contact with it, just like Jupiter stationed and Mercury made contact with it. Back to that period of time, 12th to 16th October, we have Sun trining Jupiter, usually very good. We have Venus opposing Uranus. Could be anxious, could be interesting for relationships, but we have Venus trining to Neptune, and all of these aspects are happening in a 5-day period under the umbrella of Sun square Mars. That'll be happening sort of the whole time while all that other stuff, let's say, happens under it like an umbrella. So how do we characterize this? You know, Sun square Mars is about action and taking new steps. Mercury square Pluto is going to bring depth to things, and it could also bring conflict to things. Correlate with the Mars square. A Sun trine Jupiter will ease all that, will ease the extremes of Pluto and ease the aggression inherent in a Mars square. Jupiter trine Sun is an excellent aspect to find ourselves under for a challenging family here. And when we get to the Venus stuff, Venus opposite Uranus, I find a lot of unrealistic expectations could be challenged or brought up to the surface at this time. Unusual people we could meet, unusual people we could be subject to, unusual conversations or just ways of relating to other people. We could find ourselves subject to the unusual and deepened by it. So I think on the whole, this could be challenging but good. I think it could be challenging but good if we're willing to lean into the challenge. And you don't need an astrologer to tell you. So I see the whole first half of October, in spite of it being eclipse season, as being relatively easy transits. And like I said, I want to really keep this on the basic side. I want to keep it on the very basic side. And with that, let's look at the full moon on October 17th, 2024. Now, this full moon is going to be a harvest time. And with the moon in Pisces close to Eris, we have a spiritual, sensitive, psychic, empathic, very mystical influence. These stars have always made things weird. And in contrast to the sun in Virgo, we have a lot of opposite energies at play. We have axis here of the nodes in a Virgo Pisces and axis sun and moon in Virgo Pisces. It's really going to split things. There's going to be a left brain, right brain split in just everyone's experience. Oh, let's see. There we go. Sorry, everyone. Okay, we're back. My head's where it belongs. So let's look at that left brain, right brain split, Pisces, Virgo axis. That's kind of the main theme here. So this goes to kind of more like logical, rational, common sense being associated with Virgo, and then like intuitive, dreaming, transcendental inspiration being associated with Pisces. And the way it breaks down when there's a strong opposition and an axis between the two is that the left brain and right brain are often split. And we could be set up here to be manipulated. Pluto, Mars is manipulative. When we get Eris involved, it's very manipulative. These are an octave set. Mars, Pluto, Eris. Eris is a higher octave of Pluto, which is a higher octave of Mars. So we're dealing with probably one of the more this is where you find diabolical activity. One of the places you find diabolical activity is when you get these three bodies in contact. And we could be manipulated forcefully here. There could be powerful forces that act on the collective this month. Remember that Mars was on Sirius for the new moon. Sirius is a star that has to do with taking things too far, too much, too hot, too everything. And Pluto's polarizing. Pluto takes things to extremes. Pluto, is that the action of Pluto, the way Pluto teaches, is to create intense, extreme situations. So if you have a meditation practice leaning on it this month, that's going to be big. And if you do lean on a meditation practice, an Eris moon is great for depth psychology and self-recognition and shadow work. And I'll say a little more about that later. When we get into the moon being with Eris and Chiron, we have a sort of shadow work projection theme with Eris moon. And it puts the conscious moon in touch with what it's hiding, what wants to be recognized. And it's definitely a liberation signature, but it's liberation through processing and releasing trauma, liberation through working with and integrating the shadow. Still tons of close star alignments. I'm going to ignore them. Jupiter on Bellatrix, 4 arc minutes, and the Sun on Arcturus, which means the Sun is also on Spica. These are blessing stars. Spica and Bellatrix are blessing stars, and we have 2 close relationships. Benefics on blessing stars. I do want to make note, though, that the star Jupiter is on Bellatrix is about... it could bring out the harshness or the shadow side of Jupiter. If it doesn't bring out Jupiter's shadow side, it could bring out the shadow side of situations, because Bellatrix is a star that portends success through working with the shadow. That's success through working with the shadow. The main thing that I see here in this full moon that's messed up is a grand cross involving Pluto, Sun, Mars, and Moon, Eris, Chiron. Okay, and Mars is on Pollux. Now Pollux was the evil twin of the twins. He was the twin that lived. He was the Cain figure, and Pluto's here in its position on the U.S. Pluto return, but we'll leave that aside. Pluto's a wild card, but this is going to be a doozy, man. This is a very volatile signature for a new moon, and like time to Halloween. This is just going to be a doozy. Pluto Mars sucks. It's hard. Pluto Mars is hard. Even Mohandas Gandhi had natal Pluto Mars contact. So like I said, Pluto goes to extremes. It's a wild card. You can't tell. Like Mohandas Gandhi didn't do monstrous things, but he was connected to force. He resisted force. He was threatened by force. He was beaten by the British authorities and his enemies. He's beaten very seriously. He suffered 5 assassination attempts before a 6th one took his life. So Mars-Pluto contact is like this, even if it doesn't make soldiers or monsters out of us. So be careful. Be careful, everyone. This month, just to synthesize this full moon, try and do it quickly, we should see general patterns that correlate to the distorted and confused energy of eclipses. And the manifestation of them could be aggressive or forceful. Could be violent and disruptive. Those are Mars-Pluto features, especially given the stars they're on. And there will always be a full range of expressions. When we look at everyone's case, this will be great for some. It'll empower us to fearlessly look inward, to do the shadow work, to see what we're afraid to look at in ourselves, to see, like inwardly, maybe, we can engage ourselves, Moon Eris, and what we've been unable or unwilling to work with. It could even be the nature of reconciliation or working with trauma, force, Mars-Pluto in skillful ways. And this is, for many, that will have that choice. And for many of us on Earth, this will reflect the time-honored Pluto-Mars activity of violence. especially with Mars on Pollux, Mars on Sirius. I mean, these transits favor militant approaches to problems. These transits favor a punch you in the face approach to solving problems. And I think if we look at the global arena, we see two situations that have the ability to affect the whole world systemically, which like is a series and such thing. We have a U.S. presidential election, November 5th, and we have an ongoing Israeli offensive against Islamic forces in the Middle East. And these are not the transits of easing any tensions this month. These are the transits of learning and growing through dealing with violence, dealing with the shadow side, dealing with trauma, dealing with the wounds that affect us. Rough stuff, friends. The combination of the new moon eclipse and the volatile grand cross for the full moon makes me think it's a really good month to keep a low profile. Just focus on inner work and use the instability in the outer world as a catalyst and springboard to examine our own inner animal side, our human instincts, including the sexual and violent ones. You know, like anything we're seeing out there in the world, we can use it to become more whole and integrated by leaning into a wisdom-based examination, right? Sun Spica, a wisdom-based examination of where we've been wounded and our dark side around it. So, I mean, the cards are on the table. It's the choice is yours. The choice is yours. Regardless of what the world is doing, we can always take this inward wisely and become more integrated and whole. That's always on the table. So be careful this cycle, friends. Be kind. Be polite. We'll all be under these influences. This could be a hard month to stomach. It could be a month to sharpen your inner tools. And a time to understand that we're learning and growing through the shadow side of experience, as indicated by Jupiter on Bellatrix. Success, but through working with the shadow. All right, onward. As the full moon's happening, we have Venus sextile Pluto and the Sun opposite Eris. Sun opposite Eris is part of that grand cross. So is Mars square Eris, Sun square Pluto. And later, as the next new moon approaches, we'll have the Pluto opposite Mars perfect. But just this third week of the month, the date 17th through 23rd, what we're looking at is basically the manifestation of a grand cross coming to various points of perfection, the square and opposition that create the squares and oppositions that create the grand cross, perfecting. This could be very challenging, and to reflect that, we have Mercury trine Saturn on the 21st and 22nd. And that's going to be the brightest mark in the sky all week, Mercury trine Saturn. So it helps with seriousness, helps with clear thinking, problem solving. But this is unruly. It's going to be an unruly week compared to the first week of October. It's very disharmonious, very disrupted. And on the 24th, we have the waning quarter moon chart. So I want to put that up there. The moon will be in Cancer, very close to Mars. Mars will be on Procyon, Alpha Canis Major. And things will largely be the way they have been, except that Mercury and Venus will have moved into Libra and Scorpio, respectively. And then looking towards the last week of the lunation, the waning quarter moon to next new moon on November 1st, what we see is Mars sextile Uranus. And this will be in effect for 4 or 5 days, centering on the 24th of October. And it's very innovative, very lucky, very strategic, has a lot of insight. It's very breakthrough oriented, very futuristic. It likes to make moves. And this will be in the mundane alignment. So we could see a lot of dynamic risk taking. We could see a lot of activity of a more let's just say kind of carefree or dice rolling. Mars sextile Uranus rolls the dice. Mars trine Neptune is really interesting. It's very inspired. It takes inspired action. It also rolls dice. It takes chances, but less of a maverick, more of an artist, more of a vivid artist. And at the same time, we have this Mars Neptune trine. We have a Venus square to Saturn. So almost to the hour on the 28th of October, these both go exact. And as the month winds down, I think we could see in this some discomfort. Venus is in Scorpio and Saturn's in Aquarius, and this could highlight commitment issues or relationship issues for some. For others, it could secure a long-term relationship. And generally, when Saturn squares Venus, we have a hard time. We have a hard time feeling sweet or appreciating just kind of what's going on. More so when Venus is in Scorpio. She doesn't function exceptionally well in Scorpio. And on the 30th and 31st, just as the month's winding down, we'll see Mercury connected to outer planets Uranus and Neptune by an opposition to Uranus and a trine to Neptune. And this I just want to generalize as being very refined, sensitive, psychic, inspired. These will be a great time to meditate and pray, do inner work of any nature. And then with that next new moon on the 1st, we do have a Mars-Pluto opposition and everything, if you remember, that I talked about. Relative to Mars and Pluto in contact, force, forcefulness, aggressive, not invariably, but that's the template. We'll be headed into the next new moon on that note. So just to close this video down, I want to look at the next new moon. Next new moon happens with another grand trine, another Mars grand trine, very busy. This one, Mars, Mercury, Neptune. Mars, Mercury, Neptune, with Mars opposite Pluto and Venus opposite Jupiter. Jupiter sextile to Chiron to one arc minute. So that looks like taking the difficulty of this month and starting to work with it, moving in a healing direction for everybody. That's all for this month. I'll be back next month to look at that November 1st moon. Let's see, what is important to say? I have some notes here. I'm starting to teach. Yeah, I'm getting my little teaching toes wet with a co-teaching spot at Dr. Danny Inman's Constellational Astrology course, October 4th. Link in the description. I'll put it up. We'll do links. And it's especially excellent because Dr. Danny's donating the profits from the course tuition to Serena's GoFundMe. Link, Serena's GoFundMe is probably news you're all tired of hearing about, unless you're new to my channel. My dearly beloved is applying for Social Security disability. She's been in amazing pain and hasn't been able to work for a year. It's been very hard, and she was just denied. Again, in upbeat news, I was able to acquire OneSkyAstrology.com. So I'll be kind of phasing into One Sky Astrology. I didn't have time to make a thing out to here this month, but yeah, someone else owned it for 6 years. They never developed it. They wanted to sell it to me for an outrageous price. I guess this was their business model, but I never bid, and they got bored or went bankrupt or something. So I bought it, and that's it's kind of a little victory for me. in the category of victories for you, and also in the category of upbeat news, I'm reinvigorating my dialogue series. I've been in contact with my next guest, ironing out probably a late October, early November publication. But my guest will be Abby Quinn of Sumerian Astrology and the .com and the YouTube channel Sumerian Astrology, and we're going to talk about the evolution of astrology from Sumer through Babylon to Greece, which from which we inherit it directly today. Deep history. Worth waiting for, but it'll be a little while before that drops. If you're on Facebook, come to Radical Astrology, an online space centered around all truly archaic forms of astrology, by which I mean using the actual skies. And bless you all. Thanks for watching. And stay aligned.